Yo. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome back into the Fantasy Headliners. It's your boy Kyle back with our wide receiver start and sit analysis for every matchup of week 13 of the season. And things look a little bit different behind me. Why? Well, it's because I'm standing. I'm not sitting this time. Got to do a few videos where I'm standing because I'm having some back issues. I got to get out of the chair a little bit. My chiropractor is like, bro, you got to stop leaning and all that good stuff. So, you know what? I'm just going to stand for a few videos. I'm going to get up out of the seat and get moving around. Do it with me, Headliner Nation. Stand up. Let's do a little dance together. Okay, we're taking it a little bit too far right now, but that's all right. We're heading into week 13. It's becoming a very crucial time of the season because you're either trying to wrap up a spot in the playoffs, maybe you already have, maybe you're getting ready to head into the playoffs, whatever it may be. It's crunch time, ladies and gentlemen, and we have got to be ready to roll for the playoffs. Now, for wide receivers, how do we do in week 12? Let's pop it up on the screen there. 70% last week from your boy. And listen, that's what our goal is every single week, to hit 70%. Jalen Waddle was a hit. T. Higgins, Kendrick Bourne, calling all of them correct. Some misses, unfortunately. Deshaun Jackson, Odell Beckham Jr. I had as a sit. Josh Reynolds. So did miss out on a few there, but that's all right. Still a good week overall at 70%. That's where we want to be. Let's see if we can keep it there for week 13. Now, don't forget, when you're watching this video, it's probably the 30th of November. And because of that, you've got very little time left to get into our November drawing for $500 in cash money. And how do you do that? You head over to prizepicks.com. Now you can download their app, you can go to their website. It doesn't matter if it's eligible in your state. You sign up with our code word for a free account, Headliners, and then after you do that, you deposit $20. Now Prize Picks is going to match your $20, and then you're going to go into our drawing for $500 cash this month, but you have to complete it by 11:59 p.m. at the end of the month. It doesn't count when it reaches December 1st, all right? So make sure you do that quickly and get entered into the drawing. But ladies and gentlemen, enough is enough. Let's hop into it and let's talk about our start and sit matchups for week 13. All right, Headliner Nation, we are going to be diving right into it and going into our Thursday night matchup. The Dallas Cowboys, who have been sputtering as of late, going to be heading to New Orleans this week. CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, Cedric Wilson, all four of them listed here right now. CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, both expected back this week. However, I'm going to be listing Amari Cooper as a sit this week because I have his floor under 10 fantasy points. He's going to be getting Marshawn Lattimore more than likely this week. And as I've talked about quite a bit over the last couple of weeks, Lattimore does a really good job of limiting receptions, but gives up some big time receptions. So personally, I'm just not interested in Amari Cooper this week. I just don't think there's enough floor for me to be interested in really listing him as a start. Now, if he's your wide receiver too, if he's a guy because of all the injuries that you have to play right now, you absolutely do play him. But again, I've got his floor listed under 10 fantasy points, which is the reason why I list him as a sit here. CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, to me, have much higher ceilings this week, much higher floors. Definitely like what I could potentially get from those two a little bit more than Amari Cooper this week. Now, for the New Orleans Saints, going to go with Tre'Quan Smith as my only start this week. Smith is he's the only consistent option right now in this offense. Callaway, Harris, Humphrey, all of these guys, they're getting some looks here and there, but nothing on a week-to-week basis that says I want to play them over Tre'Quan Smith. And not only that, but Tre'Quan Smith can probably be a really good mismatch against Jordan Lewis this week. Tampa Bay at Atlanta. And for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, they're both going to be starts for me this week. Atlanta does allow the sixth most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. Hopefully, Brady's a lot better this week. This offense, again, kind of hasn't looked great. Been a little bit inconsistent in some games lately. Antonio Brown, he could end up being back maybe He's tried to make it back to practice, hasn't really done that as of yet. Still going to list him here as injured out, doubtful. But of course, if that changes over the next few days, we'll talk about it more in the rankings episode and put that information in there. Now, for the Atlanta Falcons, I am going to go with Russell Gage as a start. Really had a good performance last week. Really what a lot of people have been hoping for him to do more and more recently. He was able to do that. Based on volume alone this week, even if the ceiling will be lower and his ranking will be lower, I think based on the volume alone, we can list him as a start and think that floor could be right around that 10-point mark. The one thing about Tampa Bay's defense is it's been a lot better as of late. Over the last 4 weeks, they have allowed the 8th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. Arizona and Chicago, and for the Arizona Cardinals, DeAndre Hopkins, if he can get back this week, he's going to be a start for me. And then Christian Kirk's also going to be a start for me. We're going to sit Rondale Moore. We're going to sit AJ Green. The nickel corner for the Chicago Bears, Duke Shelley. He has allowed the 4th most receptions this season, or the 4th most receiving yards this season, to opposing slot wide receivers. If DeAndre Hopkins is back, it's going to push him there, AJ Green to the outside on the other side, and Christian Kirk into the slot, which is going to be a huge mismatch for him this week and would be a great help for Kyler Murray. So hopefully these guys are healthy and they're both back this week. For the Chicago Bears, who's going to be the quarterback? Is it going to be Justin Fields? Is it going to be Andy Dalton? I have a feeling it's going to be Andy Dalton regardless. Matt Nagy's wanting to win some games, especially after all the reports last week about him potentially getting fired. He's going to want to win some games and really try to put some of that to rest, and then we'll say, hey, next year we'll go back to Justin, but this year we're going to go with Andy if he is playing better. So for Darnell Mooney, he's going to be my only start out of the wide receivers this week. Now, Allen Robinson, Marquise Goodwin, both of them, as of right now, they are banged up and hadn't practiced, but that could change throughout the rest of the week, so we have to monitor that. Darnell Mooney, who has 24 targets over the last 2 games, is tied for the league lead in targets. I look for him to have just as many this week. The Los Angeles Chargers at the Cincinnati Bengals, and for LAC, Keenan Allen's going to continue to be a start for me because he has 10 or more targets in every game since week 8 and is second in the NFL in targets among that time. So he is really getting a lot of that volume that we were used to over the last several years that was kind of missing to begin the season. For Mike Williams last week, it was another letdown for us, but that is what he is. That's what he's been his entire career. He is a guy that is going to put some big games together. He's going to have some big plays, but he's not going to be consistent. In the beginning of the season, they were utilizing him a lot different than they are now. They have not gone back to that as of recent. They're making the target guy Keenan Allen, and then they're looking towards Mike Williams on the outside when it is appropriate. Unfortunately, it has been far fewer times than what we've been used to start the season. Now for the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm not moving away from Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, even though this is a tougher matchup. This offense is looking way too good right now. They're playing with a whole lot of confidence. They're very balanced. Joe Mixon looks really good. T. Higgins looks good. Jamar Chase, he looked like a human being last week, which is surprising because he's acted like Superman all season long so far. But this offense is really, really balanced right now. The Los Angeles Chargers are allowing over 33 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers the last 4 weeks. So even though overall for the entire season they've been really good, over the last 4 weeks they have looked a little bit easier to play against. I'll take Joe Burrow and these wide receivers in that matchup. Minnesota at Detroit is going to bring my Manscaped must-watch matchup of the week. The Manscaped banner right behind me. If you head over to manscaped.com, our friends over there are sponsoring us once again this season. And if you use code word headliners at checkout, you're going to get 20% off your entire order and free shipping. So if you're going to be getting maybe a stocking stuffer for somebody, maybe that special someone needs to, take care of themselves a little bit better, Manscaped can help them do that. Manscaped.com. Code word headliners at checkout, 20% off and free shipping. Make sure you do that right now. Now, for Minnesota and Detroit, why is this my Manscaped must-watch matchup of the week? It's got nothing to do with Detroit other than they suck. It's just the wide receivers from the Minnesota Vikings I'm interested in this week. Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. No Dalvin Cook this week. Potentially no Tyler Conklin. Haven't really heard a whole lot about Conklin as of late, but he may have been a little bit banged up in that game. Waiting to hear some more information as the week goes along. Couple of websites actually list him as questionable already. I don't know how true that is, so we'll keep an eye on it. But no Conk, potentially no Conklin, no Cook, and good Lord, get ready for the breakout. Both of these wide receivers, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, they have been top 12 wide receivers the last 3 weeks. They look really, really, really good right now. For the Detroit Lions, nobody looks good for the Detroit Lions. Why? Because they suck, but that's okay. That's the Lions for you. Those of us who are Lions fans, we get it and we understand now. We're not that worried about it. But I am going to go to Josh Reynolds as a start this week. The Minnesota Vikings have allowed the most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers the last 4 weeks. Now, the competition's been better than the Detroit Lions. I get that, but there's a connection between Josh Reynolds and Tyler Goff. That's not Tyler Goff, Jared Goff. See, he's even so poor that we don't even need to remember his first name. But Jared Goff, Josh Reynolds, I think these two connecting the rest of the season could be really good to see somebody finally separate in that Lions wide receiver group. For the New York Giants and the Miami Dolphins, the Giants, they're not going to have anybody to start for me right now. Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard, no idea if they're going to be able to play this week. No word on them yet. Kenny Golladay has basically sucked all season long. Last week, nobody's even there to help out, and the guy still can't even be a fantasy viable wide receiver. Not starting him based on those performances. And then for Darius Slayton, he is the only guy that is worth a shot right now on this team. The Miami Dolphins over the last 4 weeks have allowed the 4th most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. And because of that, for Darius Slayton, I'm going to roll with him this week to hopefully, fingers crossed, get a big-time touchdown. For the Miami Dolphins, though, we're going to go with Jalen Waddle. I mean, it was a tough matchup last week against Carolina, and this dude absolutely balled out. We had him listed as a sit. We just had him a little bit lower in the rankings because we thought that ceiling could be a little bit lower, but he had a really, really good game. Waddle still thrived in that tough matchup, and he is a start, and he was a start lower in the rankings, as I mentioned, but right now, the connection with Tua is so good. You can see that these guys are on the same page, and it comes from their time in college together. So Jalen Waddle is going to be a start for me. I think they can get him from those outside routes that are really kind of locked down by the New York Giants at times. Put him into the slot a little bit more and give him way more opportunities for bigger plays this week. Speaking of New York, we're going to go to the other team in the Meadowlands, the New York Jets. They're going to be facing off against Philadelphia this week. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, Devontae Smith, can he bounce back this week? He has had some really poor performances as of late. But as I mentioned in some other videos, it's Jalen Hurts. It's not Devontae Smith. I've got no problems with Devontae Smith. I think he can be a serviceable wide receiver. Now, I don't think he is going to be a top wide receiver like some people may have thought with him coming out of college, but I think he can do just fine. But he needs a quarterback that is way more consistent. That is not Jalen Hurts. But it is the New York Jets, and because it's the New York Jets, we will go ahead and start the wide receiver 1 on that team. For the New York Jets, looking at what we can do with them right now, this is kind of a crapshoot for me too. Really trying to figure out what we want to do with all of these guys the rest of the season. Right now, going up against Philly, Elijah Moore, who has not been playing in the slot, it's still been Jamison Crowder, is going to be a sit. Because I have to imagine if Corey Davis were to miss again, which as of right now, I'm going to list him as injured out, doubtful. That could change. We'll see if he practices. But Corey Davis, if he sits, okay, Elijah Moore is going to see Darius Slay. And Darius Slay is having one of the better cornerback seasons in the entire league. And it's just not being talked about because he plays for the Eagles. So he's probably going to be on Elijah Moore. And if he's on Elijah Moore, then I see a really low floor, really low ceiling for Elijah Moore this week. And oh yeah, Zach Wilson still continues to look pretty bad. I would love to start Elijah Moore this week, but I can't. Indianapolis at Houston, and Michael Pittman's going to be a start for me this week with Indianapolis. But one of the problems is this is a Houston team that really could get blown out early on and it's just Jonathan Taylor all day long, baby. And if that's the case, the ceiling isn't really going to be there for Michael Pittman, but the opportunity to score a touchdown is going to be there. The opportunity to see 6-7 targets should still be there. And if he can get 6 or 7 targets and find himself maybe close to 100 yards with a couple of big plays mixed in, he should be right around 10 fantasy points. So for Indianapolis, we will go with Michael Pittman as a start based on that alone. I'm just worried JT is going to have a huge week, and that's why the other wide receivers are not listed as starts. For the wide receivers in Houston, though, Brandon Cooks will be a start for me. Indy is allowing the 9th most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, and Houston will likely be throwing it quite a bit. Brandon Cooks seems to be the main beneficiary of that. Washington and Las Vegas. And for the Washington football team, Terry McLaurin, he is going to continue to be a start. I mean, he just feels so underappreciated at times. I mean, he's one of the elite wide receivers in the NFL, and I just don't think we talk about it enough. Now, I try to. I really try to give him as much props as possible. It just feels like it feels like we get a lot of questions every single week talking about, should I start Terry McLaurin? And the guys that are listed with him are like wide receiver 3s. You should probably be starting McLaurin every single week. Now, Curtis Samuel, who's back, looks good on Monday Night Football. Well, we're going to list him as a start. I mean, in this matchup here against Las Vegas does do a pretty decent job of causing pressure. And when they do that, you got to get the ball out quickly. And Curtis Samuel could be the perfect weapon in this type of a game where they're going to have a game plan structured around that. For the Las Vegas Raiders, I mean, they're going up against Washington, who allows the 4th most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. Renfro and Jackson both, I think, could eat this week, and I love their upside. Carr leads the league in passing yards right now. If you're a member and you saw my members only video that I dropped yesterday, I mentioned that with Derek Carr about how surprising it was that he leads the league in passing yards right now, but he is the only quarterback to have less than 20 touchdowns that is in a group of more than 3,000 passing yards. I mean, the yards are there. The scoring opportunities haven't just been there. And Deshaun Jackson is a huge help with that. So I'm excited to see Deshaun Jackson continue to get implemented into this offense. Now, it's a lot's going to depend on Darren Waller as well. Darren Waller is banged up, but what are we going to get from him? We're going to have to wait and see what the medical reports say the rest of the week. All right, I'm going to be completely honest with you, Headliner Nation. If I see any questions this week asking me if you should start somebody from Jacksonville, I'm going to tell you your week's probably already over with. We should not be considering anybody from this team right now. None of them are performing. None of them are helping except James Robinson and even Dan Arnold, who has never been a thing to me and finally sucked me in and trapped me, has been letting us down. I mean, we're going to talk about that more in the tight end show, but this entire team, nobody, and I mean nobody, is worth starting right now. Don't even think about it for a second, Headliner Nation. Now, for their opponents, the LA Rams, everybody's worth starting over there. Why? Because their offense is good, and they have a head coach that actually tries to get the ball into their playmakers' hands and sets up actual game plans that allows the players to succeed. I digress. For the Los Angeles Rams, we're going with Cooper Kupp. We're going with Van Jefferson. We're going with OBJ. We're going to start all 3 of them this week. Even if there isn't a whole lot of volume to go around for all 3 of them, there's still big plays to be had. And if LA gets out on Jacksonville quickly, one of these guys may not end up hitting 10 fantasy points. But maybe, just maybe, they say, hey, we're going to work on a little bit of a different game plan this week. This is a good matchup for us to do it. Get the ball out a little bit quicker, then take some shots down the field at Van Jefferson. Maybe all 3 of these guys can find the end zone. That would be the perfect scenario this week for this Rams team. Cincinnati absolutely spanked Pittsburgh on the backside this weekend. And I mean, whoo, not one of those playful spankings that's like, yeah, I'll meet you in there in a minute. Not one of those. It's like one of those, oh my God, I cheated on my math test. My dad's getting the belt. It's one of those butt whoopings that they got this past week. Now, for the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson was not good when they went up against Cleveland this past week, right? 4 interceptions, just didn't look like normal Lamar. His worst game of the season probably up until this point. But the one thing that we could see from that game is that Marquise Brown continues to be the wide receiver 1 on that team with another 10 targets this past week. So he was off, but Brown still saw 10 targets during that time. And the other thing that was noticeable at that point too was that they spread the ball around to everybody else. Rashad Bateman got targets. Duvernay got targets. Sammy Watkins got targets. Obviously, Mark Andrews was there. Patrick Ricard, Tylan Wallace. Everybody was getting targets this week. So Rashad Bateman, even though I love him, he's not really taking in a lot of those targets. Like a lot of those teams where you see, oh, hey, your top 2 wide receivers are seeing 8, 9, 10 targets. It's Mark Andrews. It's Marquise Brown. It's running the football. And then at that point, it's really whoever's open. So I'm going to list him as a start this week. Could end up having a big game. It is the Pittsburgh defense. Hasn't been great, but I expect Andrews and Brown really to lead the conversation this week. And for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, I'm playing DJ no matter what, all right? The dude has been phenomenal this season. He really turned things around with the drops. He only has 1 drop pass this year, which is great to see. So Deontay Johnson, I'm not worried about it because they're finding ways to get the balls into his hand. That was weird. I shouldn't have put an S on the end of balls. But they're finding a way to get the ball into his hands, not the balls into his hand. Come on, Kyle. Let's go, baby. But so Chase Claypool for me too, he's really borderline startable right now because as you saw this past week, he didn't hit 10 half PPR points. He had 8. Well, actually, he had 9. He had 80 receiving yards, but he only had 3 catches. So he only got 9.5 points for you. And because of that, yeah, there's some big play, but it was basically a 30-yard reception and a 40-yard reception that made his day. That was basically it. He didn't do anything else. And with the way Ben has been playing, with the way this offensive line blocks, with the struggles that they've had, it's really hard to sit here and say Chase Claypool is a must start every single week. But I will go to him again this week because I do think they're going to have to throw it, and they're one big play away from making something happen with Claypool. San Francisco and Seattle, Deebo Samuel. Let's all just take a second, okay? Just say a little something for Deebo to make sure he comes back healthy this season. May only miss a week or two, but it's not sounding good for this week, at least with a growing injury. So we're going to mark him as out for right now. Brandon Ayuk, he does have at least 80 receiving yards in 3 of the last 4 games and 2 touchdowns in 2 of the last 4 games. So he's really picking up. After being in the doghouse to begin the season, he's really starting to bounce back, and he's the startable, usable wide receiver that we saw last season. As far as a wide receiver 2 on this team, it'll be Travis Kelce. So we'll talk about that during the tight end show. Now, for the Seattle Seahawks, Tyler Lockett is looking really, really good as of recent. I mean, in the last 4 games, in 3 of them, he's had at least 100 receiving yards. Well, actually, during Monday Night Football, he has 98 as of this recording. Hopefully he gets over that 100 mark and doesn't make me a liar. But for DK Metcalf, what's going on there? I don't know why the connection with Russell Wilson just has not been there as of late. You can blame the finger, which I've been doing recently, but then Russell Wilson looked a lot better against Washington. So why is he not getting the football to DK Metcalf? I don't expect that to last long, though. We're going to put him back as a start. This is a game Seattle is really going to have to win this week. You get the ball into the hands of your playmakers when a win is much needed. Denver and Kansas City, and after Teddy Bridgewater went down with an injury, Drew Lock came in. Oh man, Denver just all around didn't look great this past week. And it's really hard for me to trust any of these wide receivers, even though I have them all listed as starts right now. So you're probably saying, Kyle, you don't trust any of them. You don't like them, but you're listing them as starts? Why? Because it's going up against Kansas City. They're going to have to throw the football. That's going to have to happen. But at this point, there's really no rhyme or reason to who is standing out at the wide receiver position. And honestly, I don't think I can list them all as sits either, because all of their floors are probably right around 10 fantasy points. Their ceilings maybe only 15 if they score a touchdown, though. So they're going to throw enough to help keep their floors up. And Tim Patrick has scored enough this season to help keep his floor up. You know, Courtland Sutton is Courtland Sutton, very, very good. Jerry Jeudy's very, very good. Volume can go to those 2 guys, so that keeps their floor up a little bit. The ceiling is just lower right now, and I don't think I trust any of them. So honestly, they're all going to be really low in my rankings this week. So if you want to play them, feel more than welcome to. If I owned them, I would be begging for a replacement right now. For the Kansas City Chiefs, there's one thing we know about this team. The wide receivers, it's Tyreek Hill. Then after that, it's really whoever can get open the quickest. I'm not trusting them. New England at Buffalo on Monday Night Football, a battle of the big ones, or like we want to call it here at the Fantasy Headliners, the battle of the Chris's. Is Chris Kennedy and Chris Chouse, who are New England and Buffalo fans respectively, are going to be, butting heads this week as their teams get ready to head off into battle against each other for who is going to take control of the AFC East. This is a really big game on Monday Night Football. As far as fantasy output, though, it may not be that big for the New England Patriots. Jacoby Myers, Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, N'Keal Harry, I'm sitting all of them. The Buffalo defense, especially the pass defense, has been way too good this week, or this season, really, this entire season. So what do I expect out of them? Well, I expect to see a little bit of a blueprint from what we saw from Indianapolis going up against Buffalo a couple of weeks ago. Run the football right at them, and then find those little plays that get open on the outsides. That's where they're going to have to make their move. Damien Harris and Ramondre Stevenson have been so good as of recent that I think they really tap into that game plan and really try to focus on running the football and keeping Josh Allen off the field as much as possible. For the Buffalo Bills, that's one reason why I'm only going with Stefon Diggs this week as a start. Just because New England has been really good on the defensive side of the ball this season, they've been causing some pressure. They can create turnovers, but the run game, I think Bill's going to try and keep it out of Josh Allen's hands. And if it's not in his hands, he can't get it into the hands of everybody else. And I don't know why I'm talking about hands so much this week. This is probably the 9th time that I've mentioned somebody's hand. So I'm going to probably have to take a step back and cool it. But listen, for this matchup, it's only going to be Stefon Diggs for me because of that alone. And the guy has just been really good this season again. Yo, Headliner Nation, there you have it. My start and sit analysis for the wide receiver position here in week 13. Do me a favor before you head out this week. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you do both of those things, especially if you are new here and you haven't subscribed already. Also, leave a comment down below. Let me know which matchup you are most excited for and who you think is going to have the biggest week at the wide receiver position. I'm going to get out of here for right now. All of you stay safe and stay healthy, and I will catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.